Hi guys, Dr. Luster here, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about why you should go dairy free. If you haven't already, I highly suggest you watch my going gluten free video because I explain a lot of things about leaky gut and why gluten is significant. And more than that, gluten and dairy actually have a very similar protein profile, which means that they chemically look a lot the same to your body. And so the most important thing about that is that once your body identifies gluten as a problem, it also identifies dairy as a problem more often than not. So I highly encourage looking at some of that because unfortunately most of the time you have to do both. So real quick synopsis of that is when you eat dairy, we are only technically designed to eat dairy when we are babies and we're drinking mother's milk, right? What's called colostrum. Now, colostrum, which is, again, like I said, mother's milk, it is the perfect food. It literally has all of the building blocks that your system needs as a baby to create your gut. And that's important, and it should be and your immune system, but it should be done for as long as possible when you're a kid, a couple of years for sure, to ensure that you get the kind of immunity that your system is designed for. Now, with that said, once your gut is closed up, we do not have the ability to process dairy, which means that we don't actually have enzymes that break down dairy, not to any significant extent anyways. So the problem with that is that a lot of it is a big stressor on your system because you're not designed to eat it. And if you think about it this way, this is a cow's breast milk. You're a cow's, like for cow babies, like just like human breast milk is for human babies, we're not really supposed to be having another species breast milk. But and then the other thing with that is there's a lot of other things that are in those things like blood and pus and stuff that is again, you're talking DNA stuff that we don't necessarily need. And so it just has a lot of implications that are not the best. So anyways, going back to how it affects your system. I talked in the gluten video a lot about leaky gut, so I'll briefly go over it really quickly in case you didn't watch that one yet. But when you eat something that your body doesn't know how to digest, like we were just talking about with dairy, your body or those things start literally punching holes in your gut. And as it's punching a hole in your gut, on the other side of your gut is your bloodstream. And this syndrome is called leaky gut syndrome. And as the food gets, the partially digested food or little pieces of it or whatever, get out into your bloodstream, your body doesn't recognize it because it's not supposed to be in your bloodstream. So once your body sees it in your bloodstream, it identifies it as an invader and it tags it so everybody else can see that this is not supposed to be in here, get it out. And then your body starts attacking it just like your immune system is supposed to do for a foreign invader. The problem is that a lot of things in your body and that are supposed to be in your bloodstream actually have a similar profile to those things that weren't supposed to be in your bloodstream. So, for example, your thyroid hormone looks very, very, very similar to gluten and to dairy. And the problem with this is that your body has now tagged the dairy or the gluten as a problem, and it's going around attacking things that look like it or things that are it, just trying to get it out. And so it ends up attacking your thyroid. And this is how autoimmune systems or autoimmune conditions are created. So, or one of the ways rather. But anyway, so it's your body's trying to get rid of these things that are coming in through leaky gut that creates this autoimmunity. So it is super important for us to try and eliminate the insult and to heal the leaky gut, to have time to heal the leaky gut. And unfortunately, that usually means eliminating dairy. Now, I didn't get to talk a lot about the different types of gluten or things where gluten hides in because it's a much more extensive and less obvious list than dairy. But I will talk about dairy for just a second. Lots of dairy is pretty obvious as to where they're pretty obvious as to where it hides. Now, there are a couple of places that it can be a little sneaky, so I'll give you those tips. But usually, the less processed dairy is, the worse it is for you, because your body is not designed to deal with it. So, things like butter or sour cream, they actually have more processing to them. There's more aging and filtering out of that protein, so your body can actually handle it a little bit better. Also, things like feta cheese, blue cheese, goat cheese, those things your body can handle a little bit better. So, and Parmesan too. So not everybody has to completely get rid of those, just depending on the person's system. And there are also places where it hides. Things like ranch dressing is a big one, that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find dairy. But lots of these things are like whey protein isolates, especially if they come from dairy or really from gluten, because gluten's not great either. Those things, they hide it. So it's a hard protein for your system to digest. And I mean, I can already tell you, bodybuilders of all sorts use all sorts of different types of whey proteins, and whether it comes from wheat or dairy, it can be a problem for your system. The gains are not worth it in that situation. In addition, I want to add that dairy substitutes can be difficult. If they have a lot of ingredients, then you're not really replacing something that your body can digest with something that you can. Now you have just caused a different problem, if that makes sense. But in addition, there are lots of really bad options for milk substitutes. The chief culprit among those is soy milk. Soy milk is, I can probably do a whole thing on soy here, but in a nutshell, soy milk is a phytoestrogen, which means that it mimics estrogen. And all soy does this. And what the problem with that is that it starts creating an imbalance of your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And so we end up seeing an increase in a dominance in estrogen where there shouldn't necessarily be, and we create other problems with that. So definitely do not recommend soy milk. Coconut and almond milk are kind of some decent alternatives. There's some arguments about whether or not we should be drinking nut milk for a lot of different reasons, because it's very, very processed. There are some lecithins, which are the plant protection type things, and so there's some arguments there. Same thing with cashew milk, oat milk, all of these things. Now, but they, at the same time, are they worse than actually drinking dairy? I would argue that no, they are not worse than actually drinking dairy, because dairy can have a lot of problems with it. But I guess it just depends on what expert you talk to. And as far as those nut milks go, I would definitely recommend, because a lot of people are looking for something that's similar to dairy, cashew milk and oat milk tend to be much thicker and much more similar to dairy. So in terms of the texture, so they tend to be more tolerable for a lot of people, especially if you're doing something like cereal, which, don't even get me started, I didn't recommend cereal. But anyways, those tend to be much more similar, versus I use like coconut milk if I'm ever going to do like a green smoothie, or I don't know, if I'm using it for cooking or something, I try and use coconut or almond milk because they're just slightly thinner. But anyways, I hope that helps. It's a definitely complex issue, and I know that people don't like giving up dairy. It's hard. Same thing with bread. But over time, it really does make a big difference, and I highly recommend it. But definitely talk to me about it, send me a message or something, and we can definitely talk a little bit more about how to do it slowly for you, and make sure that it's effective, but also realizing that it takes 6 months for it to get out of your system. So we will work on that and see how you do, but I highly encourage you to think about it because it can make a big difference in your health. Thanks, guys.